Carson City Library Board of Trustees to order. I will do the little gavel ceremoniously, and let's do roll call.
Chairperson Balderson.
Present.
Vice Chair Cranston. We'll just say he's here. Trustee Lucas.
Present.
Trustee Markle.
Present.
Trustee Nichols.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. I hope we can hear Trustee Cranston sometime. See how this goes. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the Library Board of Trustees may come forward and speak on any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Library Board. Do we have any public comment in the room? How about any public comment over the phone?
There's one caller on the line. Caller, when you hear the 2 beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Joy Holt, the Department Business Manager. I couldn't be there in person tonight, so I'm listening in on the phone.
Thank you, Joy. Welcome. Do we have anyone else on the call for public comment?
No other public comment at this time.
Thank you. Voice in the sky. I like it. Okay. And then we'll move on to agenda item number 3 for possible action, approval of the previous meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review these?
Yes.
Do we have any changes, edits, questions? I might have a question if y'all indulge me for a moment. Is there another way, possibly, potentially, I think these are recorded, that if somebody wanted to look back in our minutes and it just says, there were questions, clarifying questions, questions were answered. If we wanted to know the substance of those questions, would that be something that would need to be reflected in the minutes, or could a recording be pulled?
Carson City District Attorney Jason Woodbury for the record. I've reviewed the minutes. They are legally sufficient. The board can elect to include as much detail in the written minutes as it would like, but as you indicate, Chair, there are recordings of each meeting available online if somebody wants more detail. I don't know that we've ever had minutes that were a verbatim transcription of the meeting. So I think having those recordings is sufficient. And the drafted minutes can include as much detail as you wish.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that clarification. And I just I think about it in terms of trying to jog my own memory. And I certainly have my own notes, but when they're presented and just so cleanly typed and everything, I just thought I'd ask if that's something, but if it meets a legal threshold, I'm not concerned. And I guess we can always, of course, go back. Do you happen to know how long those videos are kept publicly available?
Jason Woodbury for the record. I don't know off the top of my head.
Like a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year in perpetuity. I hope not. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. Do I have a motion or any other conversation about the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as issued for our last meeting, September 23rd, 2021.
I second it. That's Markle for the record.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think I heard Trustee Cranston.
Yeah, I'm having audio. Hear anything? Trying to get my computer working.
Do you think it's on your end? Okay.
Yeah, it's the phone. It's being weird.
Well, I'm glad you're the one, because you're probably the most tech savvy of the bunch. So if someone's going to figure it out, it's going to be you. All right. Well, motion passes. I agree. All right, motion passes. And it's come to my attention that we should probably take our agenda items a little bit out of order tonight to be respectful of District Attorney Woodbury's time. I realize he has another commitment. So with that, I'd like to move on to agenda item 5C. And this is discussion and possible action to establish guidelines for the attendance of members of the Carson City Library Board of Trustees by means of a remote technology system, including the potential for technical difficulties and procedures that will be implemented should a trustee participating remotely, like Cranston is tonight, experience technical difficulties which prevents or disrupts the trustee's ability to participate in the meeting. Should I turn this over to you?
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate you taking the item out of order. I apologize for double booking myself, and appreciate also Dr. Steinman's willingness to allow us to do this item first. So it is a timely item, given tonight's meeting. The Nevada Open Meeting Law, and this actually isn't a COVID thing that arose. It's more utilized now, of course, because of that situation, but the Nevada Open Meeting Law does permit a member of a public body, like the Library Board of Trustees, to participate in the meeting by what they define as remote technology. So that can be either just telephonic only, or it can be a video conference, whatever it may be. The law does include a provision that concerns the potential for technical difficulties. And what the relevant provision says is that it's the responsibility of the chair of the public body to, quote, make reasonable efforts to ensure that A, members of the public body and members of the public present at the physical location of the meeting can hear or observe each member attending by a remote technology system, and B, each member of the public body in attendance can participate in the meeting. So the key phrase there is reasonable efforts. I just discussed this with Dr. Colgrove because of that it is regularly recurring with all bodies and with this body as well, that remote attendance is something people want to take advantage of. And I think Dr. Colgrove asked to agendize this item in order to provide the chair an opportunity to hear any input that the members of the public body would like to provide in regard to what their expectation is concerning those reasonable efforts. I will say from a legal perspective, it can go from one extreme to another. One extreme being that if a member is participating remotely and there is any sort of technical difficulty, the chair has the authority to immediately stop the meeting, take a recess, and to resolve the technical difficulty and has the authority to adjourn the meeting if that technical difficulty can't be resolved. That's an extreme position, but you're well within your legal authority to do that. At the other extreme, it is sufficient, in my opinion, for there to be the sort of interaction that has already occurred in this meeting tonight, confirmation that the member attending remotely can hear, but maybe having some difficulty at periodic times. And if the chair chooses, you have a quorum here. So long as we have a quorum, those are sufficient reasonable efforts, and the meeting can continue without interruption. Or, of course, there's anything in between there. If you have a sense that there are some difficulties happening and want to make 1, 2, 3 efforts to try to reconnect, to resolve those difficulties, and if those aren't successful, then resume the meeting with that, that can be appropriate. It is agendized for possible action, and that would certainly be acceptable if you wanted to take a formal motion. It's not necessary. I think it's more for input to be provided on that. And we could also address the matter specifically in the bylaws of the board. Again, I'm not necessarily suggesting that or recommending that, just because all situations are different. I mean, technical difficulties can range from pretty minor stuff to pretty major things, and the law builds in flexibility for the chair to adjust to each situation as she needs to. But that's the purpose of putting this on the agenda, to express any kind of expectations that the members might have.
And thank you for that summary. Could you expand just a little bit on when quorum is in question?
Yes, Chair. So Jason Woodbury, for the record, a quorum of the body is, of this body, is a majority of the members. So if 3 members are in attendance, either in person or by attending remotely, that is a quorum, and the meeting can continue with that. So it's actually a very good question you asked, and that's a bit of a different situation. Let's say we have 2 members here and 1 member attending remotely. In that instance, you have to have continuous participation by the member attending remotely, because if you don't have that, or for the period you don't have that, you don't have a quorum. So there can't be a meeting that continues. So I appreciate the question. I didn't think about that, but thinking about that now, that would be one exception where you don't have that flexibility. That remote access has to be continuous, because in its absence, you don't have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. And is it true that meeting without a quorum means you need to stop the meeting, or just no action can be taken?
You would need to stop the meeting entirely.
Got it. Okay.
Even for information items.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much. Members of the board, do we have additional questions for District Attorney Woodbury, or any other comments you'd like to make?
I'd just like to ask if that were to happen, if there were technical difficulties, could the chair adjourn the meeting for, say, half an hour and then resume it? Or does that sort of break the...
Yes, the option would be, and the technical term would be, to recess. So you can take a recess for however long you deem appropriate. You would want to announce the amount of time for any member of the public who was listening in or here in attendance, so they know, okay, I've got 5 minutes or I've got half an hour before I need to be back. But you can take that recess. It does need to be for a definite period of time, but that is one option. You also have that authority to adjourn the meeting entirely, even if you haven't completed the entire agenda. It would be my recommendation that if that is your election, that we go ahead and back that up with a motion and a vote of the members of the board, just because we operate under Robert's rules pursuant to the bylaws. The chair has the unilateral authority to adjourn once the agenda is completed. So that's why at the end of meetings, we don't take a vote on that. The chair just adjourns the meeting. But in order to adjourn the meeting under Robert's rules before the completion of the agenda, that requires a vote of the majority of the members in attendance at the meeting. Hopefully that makes sense.
And in the event that you can't take a vote because you've lost your quorum, the meeting's over, you don't need to motion at that point?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be a meeting terminated by operation of law.
Got it. Okay.
So you would simply announce the adjournment and proceed.
Okay. More questions? Vice Chair Cranston?
I just want to comment that I've resolved my technical issues. And I like the ability to do from home. I really appreciate being able to take an opportunity to do it today, in fact, because I'm needed to watch my child at the moment.
Is that your library?
This is our library, and I just stole a picture.
Looking sharp, Trustee Cranston. Thank you, thank you. And we will be looking for your little boy if he's available.
That's why I turned the background on. Can't see him now.
Fair enough. I get it.
I can resolve that. Hang on. There he is. Right there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there he is.
Just swinging away.
Very good.
Yep. So I'm gonna turn my library back on now.
All right. All right. So we have input as to whether or not this is something the board feels needs to be memorialized in bylaws? If you're good with just whoever you elect as chair is probably, you know, we can give that flexibility there. Okay. What else? What do we think?
I'm sorry, can you unmute your microphone?
I said I feel like if we're just going to go with how the laws are, I don't think it needs action because it doesn't sound as if we're changing or trying to override or amend anything the way it currently is.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree as well.
All right. Well, then I'm going to say this agenda item is closed. And thank you very much, District Attorney Woodbury. And I do need to comment on your tie. It looks like you're wearing the state of Nevada tartan. Is that right? Nice. Looking sharp, sir. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. And if there's nothing else you all want to tell the District Attorney Woodbury, we can tell him Happy Nevada Day. All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, well then I think I'm going to jump back on into the agenda item 4, the information only in, I see we have a Friends of the Carson City Library report. Who has this one?
Do we have a copy of that?
I was just thinking that myself.
Madam Chair, Todd Colker for the record. Sorry, I was just jumping in. Did you want to go directly into the director's reports, or did you want to resume the agenda with the other items that were taken in order from that point?
Right, so that's what I meant with agenda item 4, the Friends of Carson City Library report. Am I looking at a wrong agenda?
I certainly hope so. My goodness, I shouldn't say this out loud, but I don't see it in my agenda. And I thought that I had quashed that particular bug, but if it's in the record,
Oops.
we will go back to the drawing board.
All right, I thought, oh, maybe we have a report. I thought we were taking these off.
I look forward to that day, Madam Chair, but we don't have a report tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
They only meet once every other month.
So we can expect maybe an update here or there.
In
but
November.
We wouldn't need to do it. We do meet kind of every month, but I don't think we have a November meeting, so it could be
Okay.
first of the year. That's okay. We'll have maybe more to talk about. All right, well then let's move on to agenda item 5, 5A, presentation, discussion, possible action to schedule the next meeting for the Library Board of Trustees, including potentially scheduling the location to include the possibility of in-person attendance and participation. And I think we actually just touched on this in our previous agenda item, that we normally do not have a November meeting and a December meeting separately, that because they're toward the end of the month, and those are holiday months, that we do a combined November-December meeting kind of early December instead, after Thanksgiving, but well before Christmas.
Yeah, sorry. That's what we've done the last few years.
Fantastic. So is the possible action, I thought we had this in our board schedule though, like that was, perhaps we didn't. I can't remember.
Madam Chair, Todd Colker for the record. We had discussed it briefly at the last meeting when we were discussing and reviewing the overall calendar, but we hadn't set the date certain
So
for
you
the
needed,
final meeting.
you need a date for this meeting.
Yes, it would be a motion to set the date of the meeting for a particular date. We have, staff has gone ahead and worked with staff here at the community center and reserved this room for December 1st for the next 2 years, should that date be agreeable to the board.
Does that work for everybody?
The date's good, but could we move it to 5:30 from 5? And here it says 5.
I appreciate you. How about you, Trustee Cranston?
That should be fine.
Do we need a motion to change the time?
It's also on a Wednesday. Not that that's necessarily a big deal breaker, but it won't be our usual Thursday.
That's good eye.
DA Jason Woodbury, I do recommend that you formalize that action with a motion.
All right. Does anybody want to be the one?
I'll make a motion to combine our November and December 2021 meetings into one meeting on Wednesday, December 1st at 5:30 in the Bob Kroll Boardroom in the Community Center.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Let's move on to agenda item 5B for possible action. Presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding the draft for the annual update number 1 for the strategic plan for the Carson City Library for 2019 through 2024. Dr. Steinman, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, Fred Steinman, Assistant Research Professor with the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight to present an overview of the first/second annual update and review of the current Carson City Library strategic plan. I have a brief presentation. You have the copy of the slides as well as a copy of the technical report in your handout packets and agenda packets for tonight. Director, I don't know if we want to bring the presentation up on the screen.
We don't have any magic helpers today?
Well, as you have the slides in your packets, we could probably just run over them quickly. On the second slide is just kind of an overview of the process in terms of adoption of the existing strategic plan, which was done by this board on May 30th, 2019. The results of several community and organizational strategic planning workshops, community survey, and a comprehensive analysis of various socio-demographic, economic, and industry occupation sector data was included in that initial publication strategic plan for the Carson City Library for 2019 through 2024. As part of the original contract between the Carson City Library and the College of Business at the University of Nevada, we agreed to provide 4 annual updates and evaluations of the current strategic plan 1 year from the date of the adoption of the existing strategic plan at no cost. Ideally, we would have liked to do one in 2020, but ongoing difficulties in having in-person meetings during the COVID-19 global pandemic kind of prevented that. So working with the director and staff, we opted to really do kind of a 2-year evaluation review of the strategic plan earlier in 2021. On to the next slide is kind of an overview of the work that was completed as part of this first/second annual evaluation and update. First and foremost, working with staff as well as members of the board, just simply reviewing the strategic planning process and the initial goals and objectives that were developed in 2019. That also include a comprehensive review and evaluation of the current core values, the strategic mission statement and vision statement, and as we'll talk about in a second, revising of the core values, the mission statement, and the vision statement as necessary. We also had the opportunity to complete updated SWOT, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. And during the workshop conducted with staff in August of 2021, an opportunity to review some revised socio-demographic and economic data for Carson City and kind of the northwestern Nevada region. Unfortunately, neither fortunately or unfortunately, that revised socio-demographic and economic data didn't make its way into the technical report in your agenda packets, primarily because the data that was available for us for the workshop in 2021 really just covered the time period up to 2019 and the early part of 2020. Census data for the current 2020 decennial census wasn't made available to the public really until October of this year, this month. So a lot of the socio-demographic data we looked at was really just outdated and didn't have much bearing on the work that we did. On to the next slide. Again, some just kind of additional information about the process completed in this first/second annual evaluation and update. In addition to the delay of having to move everything to 2021, one thing that we were able to do, and of course, I presented an overview of these preliminary results at the board meeting of August 26, 2021, was an update to the community needs assessment that we completed as part of the original strategic plan. That comprehensive community survey consisted of a total of 29 total questions. We were actually able to revise some of the questions from the original survey, but also add some additional questions that library staff wanted asked, primarily as the library just kind of continues to address some of the changes in demand of services within the community, both as a result of the pandemic and just kind of in the normal course of growth of Carson City and the region. As I've already mentioned, I was able to conduct a half-day strategic planning workshop with library staff, primarily senior executive and management staff here in this room on August 13th of this year, and then, of course, having the opportunity to meet with the board during a board meeting on August 26th to get your input and incorporate that in the update as well. On to the next slide is just kind of an overview of the core values that were developed originally in 2019, reviewed and slightly updated for 2021. There weren't actually any changes to the actual core values, still remaining to be access, respect, accountability, customer satisfaction, collaboration, community, innovation, and education. However, working with staff during the half-day workshop on August 13th, we did make some slight changes to the definitions of those core values, really just kind of clarification definitions that are included in the actual technical report itself. On the next slide, you will see the original mission statement from 2019 and then the revised mission statement that was revised during that half-day workshop for 2021 moving forward. And the revised mission statement is really kind of a reflection of how the library has adjusted to having to provide programs, services, and resources in the very changed reality of a COVID/post-COVID world, really focusing again on improving people's lives through relevant, traditional, and innovative means. And certainly innovative has been a key word that most public organizations, the library notwithstanding, have had to address as well. Certainly, again, as part of the library's core mission, the continued development, delivery of the services, programs, and resources and sources of information that the library provides. And again, is kind of in response to the challenges of providing those services and resources in a COVID/post-COVID world, continuing to provide access to the library's facilities that supports and enhances the community's quality of life were key elements that library staff really wanted to emphasize in this revised mission statement. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see the original vision statement developed in 2019, and then the somewhat revised vision statement completed on August 13th, and then will be serving as the revised revised vision statement moving forward. Again, kind of reflecting some of the changed orientation of the library in this COVID/post-COVID world. Really, library staff wanted to focus on growing and evolving the library to become a true vibrant hub, again, for community engagement, discovery, and learning, really touching upon core functions of the library itself. Moving on to the next slide is really just a listing of the organizational goals and the priority ranking from 2019. And if you go quickly to the next slide, you'll see the reworked and reprioritized goals for 2021 into 2022. And of course, in May of 2022, I'll again reach out to the executive director of the library, and then we'll have an opportunity to evaluate progress on achieving these goals. Overall, library staff generally concluded that progress has been made at some various level on all 4 of the original goals. But given some of the challenges that the library has faced, as well as the input that we received from the community survey, it was really decided to kind of move the first or the second original goal, focusing on operations improvements, and the original third goal, access and comfort improvements, up to kind of the priority 1, priority 2 level. Not to say that services, programs, and resources, original goal number 1, and facility and space improvements, original goal number 4, are not important moving forward. It's just a case of understanding that there are limited resources, limited time, and trying to kind of figure out where the biggest return on investment can be had for the coming year of continued implementation. Really led staff to focus on operations improvements and access and comfort improvements for the coming year. On to the next slide is just a word cloud of the summarized results of the SWOT analysis, beginning with strengths. Again, I presented this overview to you on your August 2021 meeting. But again, just based upon the workshop results from August 13th, as well as some of the community survey results, really the relationship that the library, the positive relationship the library has with the community and various community partners was consistently highlighted as a primary strength, as well as the technology investments that the library has made, its investments in staff, and its ability to maintain somewhat regular hours of operation, even during the kind of the highest frequency counts of the pandemic here in Carson City and throughout northwestern Nevada. Next slide is just a summary of the weaknesses identified in the SWOT analysis. Lack of, not surprising as the most common response in weaknesses, and I think that's, again, a reflection of the challenge that public organizations have had to deal with over the last 18 or so months. Again, not surprising, some of the concerns regarding the library's existing facility, physical facility, the actual library building itself. Not necessarily a weakness, but wanting to do more with the space, wanting to have more space to expand programs, resources, services, even more dedicated space to specific dedicated programming and activities, were all kind of some of the general weaknesses identified. Next slide really just summarizes the opportunities, collaboration and partnership with a wider and more diverse group of community partners was an identified opportunity that the library really wants to focus on capitalizing over the next year, taking advantage of some of the open staff positions, rethinking of those positions, dedicating them to specific program, service, and resource development were kind of top among the major opportunities moving forward. And then on to the next slide are just some of the looming threats that the library is going to try to keep an eye on for the coming year. Certainly a resurgent pandemic, top amongst those threats. But certainly, as we saw over the summer months, even the threat of natural disasters, the disruption to normal operations, the disruption to normal life for library patrons as a result of those natural disasters really were top of mind of the potential threats that the library will continue to kind of guard against and potentially continue to employ alternative technological options to continue to provide services, resources, and programmings to the public. Again, a common threat every time you ask what the threat to a public sector organization is today is certainly funding and other critical resources. It's a big question from 1 month, 1 week, 1 day to the next, given just the high level of uncertainty that exists in terms of public funding sources. And certainly, that uncertainty is extended to a federal and state level as well. The next slide is really just kind of a summary of the various issues and areas of focus that the board identified as well as members of the public identified during the August 26th meeting. And many of those primary issues and areas of focus are very, very similar to what was identified in the community survey results, as well as the results of the August 13th workshop. Again, increased community engagement, increased awareness of the library amongst the community, increased engagement with various community partners was top of list. Identifying opportunities to kind of stretch resources to achieve the critical goals already outlined within the strategic plan. Taking advantage of opportunities related to hiring of new staff and potential staff training were again top among the many areas of focus and primary issues identified. And then really kind of the last slide, the next slide, are just some of the, again, summarized primary issues and areas of focus, again, taking from the August 13th workshop, but also from the board meeting at the end of August. Again, chief among them, again, were some of the various staffing challenges, finding qualified staff, but also kind of looking at that as an opportunity to kind of realign existing positions to specific program services and resources that the community is demanding. With that is obviously the continued development of new programs, resources, and services that were really identified within the results of the community survey. And then again, not surprising as we kind of see it again and again, really needing to improve both the breadth and depth of the various partnerships that the Carson City Library engages with, either other public sector organizations at the state or local government level, private sector interests, and various nonprofit organizations. With that, that's kind of the summary of the update in a nutshell. Again, we'll be coming back to this in less than a year, May of 2022. And again, we'll kind of repeat the process, evaluate where the library has made progress or has not made progress in achieving these specific goals, and then update again after that. And by that time, we'll be, believe it or not, talking about a new 5-year strategic plan as we get further down the road in implementation. More than happy to take any questions that you may have regarding this update.
Have questions, comments? Members of the board.
This is Beth Markle for the record. This is I don't know, maybe it's a weird question, and maybe it's more directed to when we start talking about the specific plan, but I'm struck by the total lack of the word literacy. Not in there anywhere, ever. And, there's a lot of different kinds of literacy. It's not just, 3-year-old story hour. So that's just a comment that I have that, sometimes, as parents in a family, you know what your kids want, and you try and give them to a degree what they want, but you also give them what they need. And you have to be smart enough to know, what it is that they need, that they're going to need for now and for the future. And like I said, I'm just struck by the total lack of the word literacy.
And it is kind of interesting that that particular word, doesn't show up, either in the results of the community survey, the SWOT analysis, and even some of the public engagement we had in August. I would say that, your point that literacy, can mean many different things, is a little bit captured in there, especially in the world of the technological literacy component. Staff pointed this out several times during the August 13th workshop, and it came up quite a few times during the board meeting in August. Given that so much of our life over the last 18 months have moved to a digital and virtual world, there is a significant portion of the population in Carson City and throughout the region that depend on the library, that have difficulties using that technology. The word technology shows up quite a few times in the SWOT analysis and the community survey, and really the request from the public that the library be there, to help on those technological issues. Probably the more traditional or layman's understanding of what literacy is from a reading standpoint, was probably captured more in the discussions regarding the partnerships and the needed increased depth and breadth of those partnerships. Primarily working with the school district and other school districts within the region, given the role that the school districts and even other institutions of the Nevada system of higher education, like Western Nevada College, have either for youth or adult literacy efforts, and maybe identifying ways in which the library can support those efforts, either through after-school programs, kind of continuing those educational activities into the summer months, holiday months when either the public schools or the college is, on break. So even though the word literacy itself really does not show up a lot,
Ever.
yeah. I think in a lot of ways, the theme of literacy is captured either in the discussion on the technology issues and the challenges that a significant percentage of the population are having, making that transition to a virtual digital world and needed support in that area, as well as the library deepening its partnerships with institutions like Western Nevada College, the school district, and other school districts in the area to support the efforts of either youth or adult literacy efforts. But it's a point well taken, and it's something that kind of piqued my curiosity as well, especially in working with the community survey results, that it's a word that doesn't show up.
I guess I'm just old.
No,
Don't say that.
it's an excellent point. And I think it maybe reflects a little bit of change in the way the public views literacy, being a technological issue, especially given the challenges that a lot of people have had in shifting to a virtual digital world. And then also the community kind of thinking about, well, what is the role of the library versus the schools versus the college? And again, during the staff workshop, we spent a great deal of time talking about that exact issue. How can we enhance that technological literacy question as well as the more traditional understanding of literacy through increased engagement and partnerships?
Yeah, if you can't read the screen, it doesn't matter
Amen.
if you can use the technology or not.
Absolutely.
Well, and just to add to your point, though, it's not even necessarily reading the screen. We have so much other encoded information just in colors and icons, and it's all so much to unpack.
And I think your point's very well taken, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, Trustee Markle. Did you have more?
Not now.
All right. Anything on this side of the table? Trustee Nichols.
Really appreciate your presentation. Thank you. And sadly, I think to his point, people may be thinking about literacy, but they don't use that term anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if you think about it, somebody says, like I was having problems at our last meeting. I would say, oh my God, am I technically challenged? You wouldn't say, am I technically illiterate? So I think the intent, the meaning is probably still there, but people use different terms now for it. But it is kind of sad that the word's not in there because I still think, literacy reading, and it would be nice to see something about story time or getting kids in there, or even the English, as a second language program that the library had. I think that's really important. And that could have been under that heading. So that's kind of sad that it's not in there.
And just for clarification too, within the technical report, so there are the 4 primary goals. And then under each one of those goals are a series of specific actionable items and objectives. And especially on the program side of the goals, a number of the actionable items specifically, call out literacy efforts, be it English as a second language, youth literacy programs, or adult literacy programs. But again, the point's well taken in that, from at least the community survey results, I think you're starting to see a bit of a shift in the way in which individuals kind of define and term literacy, expressing their frustration with the use of technology and not being able to understand the icon on the screen, or how to actually utilize the technology. And again, as we had this discussion during the half day, really kind of turned into a 3/4 day workshop, that was a primary area kind of identified for the library to focus on, with its continued outreach and engagement with the community, is making sure that individual members of the community can actually access resources, be it digitally or more traditionally in the written word.
I have more. But before, Vice Chair Cranston, did you have comment? I couldn't quite tell. I did get a little bit distracted by your little boy there for a minute. But if you had questions, I can't tell if you're muted, if you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
There we are. Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I've got 2 different mute buttons. So for me, I mean, I agree with the statement about literacy, and especially with regards to the technology. It doesn't matter if you can read per se if you're not technologically literate, right? So I do like the idea of reaching out and spreading that a bit, but I don't really have much to add.
All right. Well, thank you. I would like to I'm looking at this word cloud for threats. And I think it's page or slide 22 here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at some of the smaller words, so perhaps they didn't come up as often. But when we think of a threat, some of these seem pretty standard. I see gun, I see violence, I see cyber attack. And then there's 2 words that really jump out that are troubling, and that is poverty and addiction. So when we look at our vision, our revised vision, and say that we want to be a vibrant hub for community engagement, discovery, and learning, and we believe that the most at-risk people in our community are a threat, this is troubling to me. Do you have any context?
Yeah, so it really kind of has to do with the way in which the word threat is kind of defined, which I know is kind of a nitpicky thing to say, but in traditional strategic planning worlds, threats are usually considered things that may disrupt or inhibit an organization from making progress on key goals. And that's probably why, especially in thinking about issues regarding rising poverty within the region, certainly as a result of the pandemic and the disruption to work and the relationship that people have to work, why probably existing goal number 2, operations improvements and access and comfort improvements, original goal number 3, were bumped up in terms of priority. Really thinking about, again, maybe by increased partnership and engagement with other community organizations and groups, how the library can be part of the solution in addressing some of these issues that have emerged in the community, especially amongst individuals who are most at risk. So the inclusion of words like poverty and drugs as threats really are not, a threat to the library itself, but it's a future condition that the library should concern itself with as it continues to develop new programs, resources, and services, either independent of other organizations or in partnership with other organizations. And that's primarily because threats, again, are external conditions. They don't fit well in the weaknesses category because weaknesses are always an assessment of the deficiencies internal to an organization. The threats are external things that we have to kind of keep on our radar. And certainly, largely due to the pandemic, we've seen, increased frequencies of poverty within our region, increased rates of mental distress. We've seen increased homelessness. And of course, homelessness was a concern going into the pandemic, and certainly it's been made harder because of the pandemic. And these were kind of specific areas that we kind of saw in some of the discussions and input from the community survey, and during the staff workshop of these are going to be areas that just about every public sector organization in our region are going to have to concern themselves with, the library included. Of course, it's a balancing act because providing social services is not necessarily a core function of a library, but the library is there to serve the public's interest. And those individuals, that, have certain underlying conditions, they really truly depend on an organization like the library for access to the world. And the library, given its unique physical geographic location, central within the community, as we even talked during the board meeting in August, could almost be a central clearinghouse or hub for other service providers in the area, to provide services to these individuals who need these critical services. Not necessarily that the library would provide the services, but a space where service providers, can work with individuals who come to the library because they have no place to go. Things like cybersecurity is an actual, what you would consider a threat. And again, operations improvements was pushed up primarily because of issues related to that. Given again, so much of our life has been moved into a virtual and digital online space. This is a growing concern. It's a growing concern in terms of the privacy of patron data, but also protection of library services and programs offered online, and the harm to the library that could come if those services were disrupted because of an attack or outage of critical infrastructure. So again, that's one of the rationales as to upping operations improvements to the top priority. And then, of course, as we talked about back in 2019, given the library's central geographic location, it has become a bit of a hub for a population that has nowhere else to go in terms of the homeless population. And thinking about, well, how do we provide a safe and secure space for all patrons, be it homeless or not homeless, is going to be a challenge for the library moving forward as well. So it's a long answer to a straightforward question. Again, I wouldn't view them as, traditional threats to the library's ability to do something, but more concerns that should be on the library's radar over the next year at least.
I appreciate that clarification. I would say our board has an advocacy component, although I don't know that we'll find it in NRS 379, but ALA does have strong recommendations, and United for Libraries does as well, on what boards can do to be advocates. So if being able to refer to our strategic plan when we engage in advocacy with other civic organizations, public officials, whatever, to point out that this is on our radar and should be on theirs as well. I certainly appreciate that. And there are increasingly fewer places for folks to go, which should be a concern for everybody. And it's on all of us to make sure that that advocacy happens. So I certainly appreciate the explanation and wanted to make that comment too. Do we have more from the board? I'm looking up at Trustee Cranston again. Okay.
So this is the annual report number 1, and the second one will happen in May. And you've done a tremendous amount of work here, and we definitely appreciate it. But will the second one be as big?
No, probably not, only because this one covers 2 years, where, the annual update really should have just been, from 2019 to 2020. Obviously, again, the pandemic got in the way of us doing the work that we wanted to do in terms of that update. So again, working with the director, we made the decision to push, the first annual update to May of 2021. And then again, that's when we launched the community survey and allowed it to kind of percolate throughout the community. And then we were at a place where, even from my position at the university and being subject to, state policy for state workers, I really couldn't resume in-person work until the summer months. So I would say no, the second annual update, which would really cover year 3 of implementation, not likely to be as lengthy, only because it'll cover just 1 year, not 2 full years of implementation.
So we should expect that like next year at this time?
Probably. Again, I have on my calendar in the office, kind of a note that every May I need to, ping the executive director and say, hey, it's been a year again. It's time to get back to this. May of 2022 is likely when that ping will occur. And then again, working with the director and the staff, plan the various activities for the annual update, and then probably have that completed probably a little sooner, probably July of 2022. Again, just disruptions to the ability to do normal work in the last 18 months kind of delayed this one to this date in October of 2021.
I was also struck by the continued, fairly consistent use of the term lack of financial and non-financial resources. My understanding is that the library's budget from the city has not been cut.
Right.
And I understand that the Friends of the Library weren't able to contribute the way they have in the past. But it felt a little like this is a disaster because we don't have any financial and non-financial resources. But in reality, the resources, a lot of the resources haven't really changed that much. And some of them just haven't been sort of re-engaged. But I did feel like it was almost an alarmist term because it was in there a lot.
And your point is very well taken. This conversation I actually had with the director not too long ago about how to kind of phrase those particular concerns around the quote unquote lack of that we heard both during the staff workshop, during the public meeting, with this board meeting, and your point is well taken. And the lack of stems not from actual cuts, but over the last year, primarily as the pandemic forced closure of other key service providers, either private sector or public sector. So in the private sector, no movie theaters for a very long time. In the public sector, other public sector and nonprofit organizations had to shutter their doors. The library experienced a fairly significant surge in demand for programs, resources, because it was one of the few places where people could still get these services and resources. So as that surge in demand and activity was occurring, there wasn't the accompanying increase in resources to keep pace with the surge of demand. And that's really what kind of triggers the lack of. We're seeing more and more people come into the doors, and we're planned for, say, 100 people, and then 500 people show up. That's kind of the result of the lack of not having growth in the resources to meet that surge in demand that occurred as a result of so many other sources of programs, resources, and services, be it educational and entertainment and anything in between, either being shuttered or closing their doors permanently.
Okay.
But to that point, what that sounds like still is perhaps it's a culture, perhaps it's personal. I mean, if you've got members of your household who they do lack funds, it might feel that I'm going to project that everywhere I go. But I think you've got about what you've had, right? I would say probably the last real like cuts were probably related to the Great Recession. Do we have
there's
staff that's been around that long?
There's been additional money that has come in.
Between grants and
Well, the CARES Act.
right, and ARPA.
You know, so it's not,
Mhm.
you know, I wonder if it doesn't come from, I'll say, staff misunderstanding how the lack of new staff makes such a difference, or, you know, it doesn't, you lose a staff member, well, you know, now you don't have to pay their salary. Why don't we have any money for, you know, DVDs? You know, things like that, I don't know if that's the case. Sometimes, you know, I don't think we want to celebrate that we're doing more with less, because doing more with less just leads to, oh, you can do more with less. And so there has to be an understanding of the reason you're doing more with less and when it will end. Right. And what's making me do it more for less? Is it because the city cut our budget? No, that's not the reason.
Right.
So the city's not being stingy. Is it because so-and-so left and they used to do all these things and now I have to do more and I'm not getting any extra benefit from it? So, you know, it could feel like, but, you know, I think that it's important that staff and the community understand that the library is fiscally responsible and doing tremendous things with the resources, with the funding that the city provides, because ultimately it's citizens of the community that are providing that, a lot of it. And so, you know, in some ways, you know, celebrating our the way we've responsibly handled things is a good thing. And instead of continually saying lack of financial and non-financial resources.
And your point is absolutely well taken, and was a common sentiment we saw in a lot of the results of the community survey, and the perception that community survey respondents have of the library. You know, very, you know, in a general sense, very appreciative of the vast array of program services and resources that the library provides on a daily basis. Again, I think the lack of stems from, again, just an unanticipated and unprecedented surge in demand for services and not being able to gear up resources quick enough to address that. And that was even something that we saw a little bit in the community survey results as well, especially during the time in the pandemic where schools were closed, parents were homeschooling, you know, and, you know, a lot of parents really kind of, you know, fell back and really put a lot of, you know, demand, if you will, on library services to kind of shore up that loss of the school being open, or, you know, from the college, you know, the college's library being closed and students not having a place to study, or, if, there are lower income students at the college, not having a library or a broadband internet connection at home, being able to go to the library and utilize those sources because that was the one place that was open. Again, I think it's fair to conclude that there is widespread community appreciation from what we saw in the community survey results, for the fiscal responsibility and the ability of the library to really stretch resources to meet a surge in demand. But there's also that recognition within the community survey and staff as well, that you can only stretch that so far. And then at a certain point, you start getting close to a breaking point. And that's something that we heard from staff as well. And again, if misery loves company, the library is not alone. That's probably par for the course for every public sector organization in the country at this point. Is after 18 months of being under siege, morale becomes an issue. And you do start to feel kind of that you're alone at sea, without a life preserver ready at hand. I don't think the library is quite at that point of no return, but it was something that we wanted not necessarily to emphasize, but at least note within the annual update, that after 18 months of being under siege, things can only stretch so far.
Do we have any more discussion from the board members? Any other comments? Well, in terms of planning, it's on the board to determine the direction of the library by studying community needs and to see that a plan is developed for meeting needs, that a plan is carried out. And we certainly appreciate all of your work to help us do that job.
Happy to do it, and I'm an over-glorified note taker in situations like this. The library and yourselves are the true content developers. So my pleasure, and look forward to continue working with the library over the next couple of years on continuing the annual updates.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steinman. All right, shall we move on to our next agenda item, which I believe was
Do we have to do
5C,
anything?
but it could be for possible action. Do we have motions that need to be entertained on this one?
Is this something we have to vote on to accept?
Just again, Fred Steinman with the university for the record. My past experience with other organizations is that boards just typically vote to receive the document.
To receive. Okay.
Not necessarily to approve anything related to it, but to simply just acknowledge receipt.
Okay.
Motion to acknowledge receipt, anybody?
This is Beth Smarkle for the record. I move that we receive the annual update number 1 for the strategic plan for the Carson City Library for 2019 through 2024, prepared by Dr. Fred Steinman from the University Center for Economic Development at UNR.
I'll second.
Was that enough words?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries. We feel more official. I like it. Okay. The next agenda item we already covered because we took that earlier in the evening. So we'll go on down to agenda item 6A, information only, presentation and discussion of reports concerning activities and operations of the library since the presentation of the last report. Director Colgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Todd Goldgrove for the record. I'll refer you to the director's report that you received separately via email and also posted on the library website as late materials. The library director's report, in addition to the budget documents, due to a glitch in the posting, were sent separately. They have been posted on the website and included in tonight's meeting's materials here for your review. A couple of quick updates. I just wanted to make sure to bring it on your radar should you get questions from the community. The recent rainy weather that we all remember a few days ago, I'm told in the city that we received on the order of 4 inches of rain in one 24-hour period. This for an area where we normally get around 7 in a year. So the library held up pretty well. There were some backed up rain gutters that caused a leak in between the old building and the new. But other than that, it was cleaned up. It is worth noting that Department Business Manager Joy Holt went above and beyond as the first person on site and leaped into action and cleaned up a nasty mess before anyone else showed up. So hats off. It's the kind of team member we're proud to have. I also wanted to, under the heading of being proud, I wanted to give you a quick update. We're now resuming the citizenship class and that Florence Phillips has been leading now for some time. And in addition, the English as a second language in-home program has not stopped throughout the pandemic, in part because the library has stepped up and was able to tool the students to provide them with Chromebook laptops so that they could keep going. That program continues unabated. And collectively, Florence was able to let me know that we can be proud that over 480 new American citizens exist here in Northern Nevada as a direct result of our participation and support in that. It's a wonderful collaboration. I need to be clear, we're not teaching the program, we're merely hosting it, but we're doing our best to provide the resources that they need to keep going. I also wanted to make sure that you're aware of the details associated with participating in tomorrow's Nevada Day Parade, should you choose to join us. The library, about 6 adults and 1 child will be going and representing from the library. We'll be bringing the pedal library unless it snows or rains, in which case we won't. But the city and the library will be joining the city at the senior center before 9 o'clock. So if you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome to park down at the senior center. There probably won't be parking at the senior center after 9 o'clock. And should you park there, there's limited seating, but we can all squeeze on the city float at the end of the parade route and get a ride back. That's the hope, or at least the plan as it stands right now. As I understand it, we'll be putting the float together at the senior center and then heading over to Carson Street, just north probably of Bath Street. So if you're not able to join us at 9 o'clock, but you still want to find us, don't hesitate to either text or call me directly on my cell phone, and I'll do my best to try to guide you into where we're at. It would be a real treat to the staff to see you there. I also wanted to point out, in part, I didn't unfurl the banner that staff put together, but you see it at the bottom of the report here. And you'll notice Professor Steinman's word clouds from the strategic plan making a prominent appearance in the lower left and top right. I absolutely had no influence over that. That is what the staff who own it and want to keep it in the front of mind decided to do. And so thank you, sir, for doing that good work. We did print that banner, though, and we'll be carrying that up at the front of the line or the back of the line, wherever we fit within the city's lineup. Oh, should you choose to join us, by all means, bring like maybe a recyclable or the sort of bag that you might take with you when you go to the grocery store and you reuse, because the city's got lots of candy and it would be great to get some help in handing that out to folks along the parade route. I also wanted to move along and share some updates and some things that I'm going to claim unabashedly as early wins from the strategic planning communication efforts that have been ongoing now for these many months. Again, thank you, Professor Steinman, for your indulgence. When we did, everyone was so engaged that we didn't let Professor Steinman out of here after it was half a day. We kept him working for 2 more hours. And it's because staff is that engaged and carrying that forward in the conversations that have been ongoing in the individual departments within the library and also on a one-on-one basis between myself and each member of the staff weekly. Cross-training is a real thing now. Staff are recognizing what their strengths are and what gets them out of bed and what they like to do. As an example, one of the staff members was trained and highly skilled at cataloging. And I'll look at Trustee Markle, who might not wince the way I do when I hear cataloging, but I avoided those classes in library school. But there are people who this really makes their day. And we had staff in other departments that had that as an art form. We're now thrilled to be able to be cross-trained and backing up those that are doing it in their day job, and vice versa, the things that they were doing in their day job, for instance, receiving the daily newspapers and doing all of the magazines and all of the tedious details associated with posting that. They're very cataloging. It's something that hadn't occurred to me, but it's something that the staff recognized and stepped up and are doing. We're doing that across departmental boundaries, and it feels almost, it's becoming almost anachronistic to use the word department now within the libraries, because there's a real growing sense of we're all pulling on the same rope, we're all in the same team. How can we help one another out? So again, thank you to this board for their support and encouragement of that effort. Another example you'll notice in the Access Services Creative Learning report of the rework of the juvenile Spanish section of the library. Another case in point where any child that had wrapped their mind around it would recognize this is the right thing to do. We would pull all these materials together and it would be all in one spot. But somehow, because of our fragmented structure and approach, we had not seen that. But because of this communication in between the groups of who's doing what, it became crystal clear. Rachel March, as an example, who is not in either Access Services or Creative Learning, was one that carried that across the finish line. Didn't take much effort. It was half of a day on a weekend, and we solved a problem. And also came to the conclusion, wow, this other magazine holder that only was holding like 3 magazines, could we just take that and move it over here? And now all of a sudden we could hold all the juvenile magazines. And it's this great collection, including front-facing. And I'm way up on a soapbox because I'm just so proud of our kids and the good work they're doing. But we've got so much more to come out of that. Other examples would include realizing that there's a different way to handle the daily and sometimes typically multiple times during a day complaints that we deal with the folks that are hanging out front of the library and smoking cigarettes dangerously close to being that 25-foot zone that the former signage said no smoking within. With the support of the district attorney's office, just running the question to ground and saying, hey, can we just change that to no smoking, period, or no smoking except in a designated area? And the problem is solved. No more testing of, well, am I really within 25 feet or not? No, the answer is no smoking, please. There's a designated area over here. Have a nice day. Similarly, with the library benches that have been part of an attractive nuisance out front, we have kickstarted an ongoing conversation as driven by the community input that we have not only through the surveys with the strategic plan, but in conversations on a daily basis. And we're actively trying to figure out how might we create a welcoming environment out in front or related to the library where there's a nice place where the community can enjoy a book without necessarily causing a gauntlet for some of the members of our community who I would have to point out might see those that are stricken with poverty or addiction as being dangerous and part of a gauntlet that they have to run if they're going to come into the library. Well, if we ignore it, we never solve for the problem, but we're actively engaged in the conversation. So again, thank you for helping lead that conversation forward. Other things that I just had to share. I mean, tomorrow, on their day off, staff are holding a book club meeting because they want to, and that's the kind of thing that an engaged staff that feels like they're part of a family fulfilling their mission are doing. Potlucks have been planned on an almost monthly basis. It's a terrible thing to admit to publicly, but it is something that we are doing within the library. So it's very exciting and heartwarming to see. Also, a quick update in terms of staffing updates. When we last met, I had mentioned that we were going out to try to hire 2 library clerks and a shelver. We've gone through that process. We have made offers, and of the 2 clerks, we have 1 accepted, another that we're waiting on acceptance and a background check, and a shelver who hopefully is accepted as of today. We're carrying that forward and trying to hire more going forward. So help is on the way. I also wanted to mention in terms of staffing updates, because right now several of those positions are open, and because in our internal conversations and as part of the strategic planning efforts, we've all recognized one of our weaknesses is how we had broken ourselves apart internally within the library, with some staff squirreled away over here and others up here and others down there. We are actively trying to figure out how we can bring us all back together into one pool where we reinforce, again, all of the things that we're learning, where we don't have to go out of our way to schedule multiple meetings to make sure everyone's on the same page because we're in the same room or we're in the same neck of the woods. So that's moving forward, and that is the full intent. We'll be likely bringing, to the extent that we can, all of us together in that one spot right now while we're actively trying to figure out how we go to the next steps and bring our plan to the library board in January for the rest of the changes. I also wanted to mention, you'll notice the snapshot was taken within the last couple of days. The banner that was on the outside of the building has been removed. And we've worked with facilities who have been able to remediate the damage that was done when the enthusiastic, the banner was a little too enthusiastically attached previously. So there shouldn't be any water coming in through those holes now, thank you. But, and there are hooks that are attached on the side of the building so we can attach banners going forward in a way that doesn't damage the building. Finally, again, under the heading of in case you hear about it or are asked to offer input, at a community meeting in the library on the 16th, on the weekend, so a community member's bicycle was stolen. We were able to provide good video content and data support to the sheriff's department. I understand that it's still in town. So should you happen to see a bike that looks around 1976 Peugeot teal blue, please don't hesitate to call the sheriff's department. They are actively looking for it. And other than that, I should, with your permission, Madam Chair, I'll go on and we'll open the question and touch bases on the 2 additional reports that have been shared.
All right, thank you. With that, board members.
I have a question.
Yay.
Todd, I just was thinking, I was driving past the library and I was just wondering if it would be possible for the city to put like a picnic table more towards the road, so that, because right now there's just benches where people gather. But if there was a picnic table a little bit further out from the entrance, or 2, I don't know how many they have sitting around, it might encourage some people to go sit at a picnic table and not spend all their time in the benches right at the door. I mean, I know you've talked about moving the benches further away, but there's a lot of grassy area and it's really nice. So that was just that's an observation of mine.
So you would suggest adding additional potentially attractive infrastructure, right, for folks to congregate in places that's not necessarily right by the front door. Is that okay? I follow you. Okay.
That's kind of my, observation and suggestion. I don't know what it would take to get the city. I mean, because I'm sure it would probably be a city responsibility. I don't know, but it just seems like something that could be explored.
Thank you, Trustee Markle. That's an excellent suggestion, and I will bring that to the conversation. And in response to your question, you're absolutely right. The grassy area, in fact, the area that's outside of the library, even the secret garden behind the library, is, as far as the city is concerned, that's the domain of Parks and Rec, that is a city park. And so I will absolutely broach the conversation and see how we can carry that forward, because I think rethinking those spaces a little bit will go a long way in support of the library's vision and mission. It's the framework for doing that will involve either a targeted grant through Parks and Rec or a capital improvement request within the city. The capital improvement request is certainly a steeper climb, but you don't get what you don't ask for.
I'd be curious to know if it has to be Parks and Rec, because I guess the library starts when the roof starts. So anything outside the library, even though if it appears to be library grounds, is Parks domain. If you have an option to potentially apply for a grant jointly with the Parks Department.
That's an excellent suggestion. And Madam Chair, you're Todd Colgrove for the record, and you're absolutely correct. Just to be clear, the library stops just inside the inside wall of the building, and then that becomes facilities, and outside of the wall of the building, then it becomes Parks and Rec. And that's interesting. I hadn't considered a joint grant proposal, but that might be a good way to go about it.
If you've got, I mean, I don't know where
A
funds
pic-
can come from, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much a picnic table costs. I mean,
it's probably the installation that gets you, you know?
yeah. I
There's
mean,
always something.
I know the benches are probably concrete, concrete picnic table, but they might have one lying around. A picnic table and a trash can. I think some of the people who congregate regularly at the door of the library would be glad to have a table. I don't know, maybe find people sleeping under them. I don't know. But a table seems to be a nice thing. I mean, you could even do a table that had a chess set on it.
Oh, there you go.
You could, you could do one. There might be one in Mills Park. I think there is, but you could have a checkerboard chess set board, and you could have people could check out a chess set from the library, because you got to have ways to pass your time sometimes.
Thank you again, Trustee Markle. I mean, I think that's a brilliant idea. I will absolutely share that and bring the conversation up with the Director of Parks and Rec. For the record, when I was first named director, I thought the chessboard was an interesting decoration in the library. And I quickly realized, no, it's actually very much a feature. It's regularly used within the library. And so I would expect it to also be regularly used outside of the library.
Yeah, I mean,
and if we can go in the direction that this is actually more of a public park and avoid the question of that we're just trying to distract people and take it sideways, then it's really a value add. Thank you.
Because a chessboard outside, if people have their own chess pieces, the library doesn't have to be open.
Yeah.
And you see those boards, tables in public parks all the time. Like it. It's a good literacy tool also.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you, Trustee and Chair. I will definitely put that into the hopper. The conversations are going to move more slowly with Parks and Rec over the next month or two.
Oh, sure.
But we will certainly be exploring it. We did have an initial quote. Part of the arguments with moving any of this or the pushback was basically, yeah, we could do that, but then we're going to have to address ADA concerns, which are right, but what they're saying is dollar signs. And it's like, well, let's have the conversation. Let's conceive it. Let's go down that road and see what that looks like. I think it's quite exciting.
And thanks for removing the banner.
Also, for the record, the board had expressed that they wanted to have the banner recycled if possible, and that was directly relayed to Parks, not Parks and Rec, but Public Works, who was able to take that off on short notice again because they happened to have a boom truck and were in the neighborhood, and so I immediately seized on the opportunity. We were able to get that cleared up. I do not expect confirmation, though, as to whether or not it actually got recycled, but we did firmly request that happen.
Well, I know that we had agreed that going forward, we wouldn't have each department manager, business manager here to go over the reports, that we review them in attachments and just ask questions if we had them. So I think we're at that point. So any questions that the board has, looking up at Cranston, want to make sure you're here.
I just had
All right.
two things actually about the director's report. First of all, kudos to the staff. It's just amazing. And I love the book club idea. That's awesome. I don't, if this isn't happening all the time, I don't want to solve a problem that's not there. Do bikes get stolen frequently? Is this a one-time thing? This bothers me that somebody came to the library. I'm sure they locked their bike up.
It bothers me a great deal, Trustee Nichols. You're absolutely right. I can't confirm, and I'm not at all certain that the bike was locked up.
Okay.
This was certainly the first such incident since I've arrived at the library. I can't speak as to how many times this has happened in the past, but it's rattled all of us, and we're actively trying to rethink, how could this happen? Why would this happen? Part of the weakness is that this occurred on a Saturday when we had a lot of people there for a public meeting, and on Saturday we don't have a lot of staff, and so they may have been a little bit off their game, because it was a new game. We hadn't hosted a large event like that for several years.
Well, I'm just wondering, and I don't know if they make these or not, but it would be kind of interesting to see if, where the bike rack is, if there was some kind of, I want to say camera, even if it was a dummy camera, that clicked, that was like a motion sensor, that clicked every time someone walked up to it. So when you're putting your bike away or taking your bike out, you become aware that your picture's being taken, or at least the illusion of your picture, that something's going on. And so if you were to you might think twice, you might go to grab it, hear that click or see that camera and go, yeah, maybe this is not the best opportunity for me to take this bike, and I'm going to go somewhere else and steal a bike. I mean, that's just.
It would be interesting, and perhaps we can figure out a way to get some audio clue there. To be clear, because of our action previously when we installed the book lockers, we did, with a capital improvement request, get a surveillance camera in place there. So this past year, we had that installed, and as a result, we had very clear video of the alleged perpetrator, not only standing, coming up to the bike rack, but actually getting on the bike and peeling off with it. But that was as far as it went. So we were able to get that information in a very timely way to the sheriff's department. But that's as far as it went.
I'd be curious though, just to pick up on that. If you said there was a big meeting and not a lot of staff, what was the circumstances that led to being light on staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may have misspoke when if I used the phrase light on staff. We typically have 4 staff in the library on the weekend, and we did have 4 staff in the library. So we have 2 on the downstairs desk and 1 on the upstairs desk and a 4th person roaming. So we were normally staffed for our normal operations. The meeting that was held there was a meeting that was convened by a professor from WNC. It was a community meeting that we have worked with in the past regularly, and there had been no incidents there. And in working with the professor, she indicated that she didn't expect that there was any need for additional staffing beyond just being able to open the room and make sure that it was available. So no additional staffing was contemplated or provided.
And thank you. And what informs the staffing model? Do you have peak times? Do you have just what staff agreed to when they were hired? How does that go?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's an excellent question. What informs the staffing model, and you'll have seen that in the access services and creative learning chart, where you've got the floor count and the average number of uses, and you can see that on the weekends, it just falls through the floor. And so what informs the staffing level in the library is not how many people it takes to manage the business, but how many people it takes to just manage our traditional desk staffing model, which is 2 on the information desk downstairs, 1 on the @2 computer lab desk, and the 4th one to spell people on their breaks and for lunch. And so that's the model that was in play when I came on board. That's the model that continues to be in play to date. I look forward to perhaps shifting that and leaning that back sometimes and increasing the staffing at others. We're only beginning to get the kind of granular data that we need to be able to inform those decisions in a reasonable way.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions on this agenda item? All right, I'll move on to agenda item 7. Information only, board members, announcements and requests for information. Have anything to announce? Any information we want to see next time?
I did have a question about this budget grants where
Oh,
there's
Want to go back? Yeah, we can go back to that. Mm-hmm.
where the operating supplies for a grant were $20,000 and there's no budget or anything. I'm assuming that's maybe a reimbursement type of thing, but $20,000 that's already been used that there's no budget for. I just have a question.
Well, Todd Colgrove for the record. I will pause for one moment to defer the question, if I may, to Department Business Manager Joy Holt, who I believe is on the line with us right now. And I'll just advise the board that both Access Services Manager Irma Reinhardt and Joy Holt are on the line, should you have questions. And if we don't get a response from Joy in about 20 seconds, then I'll chime back in.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hello?
We can. We hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
We hear you.
Okay. I apologize for my perhaps rough sounding voice, but I've got a pretty substantial cold I'm fighting right now. That said, Trustee Markle, or let me first say Joy Holt, Department Business Manager, for the record. Trustee Markle, you're correct that it is an issue of reimbursement. So first, we receive the reimbursement, which we have received those reimbursements. However, the city does what's called an augmentation twice per year. And it's at that time that we submit an augmentation asking them to apply the reimbursement amounts to the grant budget. So the money's been received, but during augmentations, augmentations apply to, sometimes they apply to the general fund, but mostly it applies to grants and gift fund. We ask for that money to be applied to the budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a little weird, but hey,
Well,
it's
and it
business.
is.
It's okay.
It's unique. It's unique from my experience that the augmentations in some, you may have heard in the past, folks in handling budgets referring to it as a true up. That's a pretty common state language, but that's essentially what a true up is. The city's equivalent of a true up is the augmentation, and they're only done twice a year. So that actually, speaking of, the first augmentation for fiscal year 22, that those requests and that will kickstart sometime around the end of November into December. And at that time is when we'll submit the request for them to apply the funds that were received as a reimbursement to the budget for grants.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any more questions on item 6A? All right. One more time for agenda item 7, board member announcements, requests for information. Anybody? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda. Oh,
Sorry.
yes.
It doesn't want to stay on. Hi, I have an announcement, and I'm only letting you know this because we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, and it just came to me. This last weekend, I got the privilege of going to a conference. It was held virtually. It was in Wisconsin. It was for the Wisconsin Middle School Teachers Association. And I am part of a global online Shakespeare theater company. And we were invited to give a presentation to them. And so, you might not like this, but I was really surprised listening, because we got to not only present, but then we listened to the teachers and their needs. And I was really surprised that the teachers are really looking for technology to inform them how to teach the humanities. I mean, you and I are from the time where, well, you read Dante. I mean, you read books, you know? But that was one of the reasons that we were invited, was because they were amazed at what we've been doing with Zoom. But I just wanted to let you all know that even in Wisconsin, teachers are looking at technology. Like, how do I engage with my students and get them excited about the humanities through technology?
Yeah, that's great. My daughter teaches middle school in Illinois, and she's a technology whiz, and she teaches social studies, and there's all kinds of stuff out there that, yeah, kids they're exposed to a degree in some school districts. And yeah, more people should be learning some of this stuff, and the library is a great place to start that learning. They don't have to read. They just have to be literate.
Right. throw some VR goggles on there and take yourself all the way back in time to Shakespearean times if you want. I mean, I don't know if we've got anything up and running currently since COVID, but VR goggles are like next level. It really is magic. Yeah, if you get a chance to do a demonstration at some point.
Yeah, you should be
I
able to do a
recommend it.
demonstration at the Carson City Library.
Right.
Because they have them, right?
Yeah.
In fact, thank you, Trustee Marco. You're right. We do have VR goggles at the library today. And we also have in the wings, sorry, Todd Colgrove for the record, we have in the wings a partnership with Western Nevada Community College, with WNC and also the Governor's Office of Economic Development, where we'll have access to 500 VR goggles through the library. I've been kind of slow playing that right now because we really need to get our own feet underneath us. But in the not distant future, we will have that up and running and be able to help up to 500 members of the community at one time.
I love it. All right. Do we have anything else for board members, announcements, and requests for information? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. This is the second public comment period. Members of the public who wish to address the Library Board of Trustees may come forward and speak on any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Library Board. I don't see any in the room. Do we have anybody on the phone?
There's one caller on the line. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is just Irma Reinhardt, Access Services Manager. I'm just on here in case you guys have any questions.
Okay.
Great. Hi, Ermal. Thank you. All right, with that, we've reached the end of our agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a good Nevada Day and a happy Halloween, everybody.
That's right. Happy Nevada Day.